Okay, so this is Ms. Mackenzie with Ms. Goodell's Creative Writing class, and we have two absolutely special guests with us today. Author Peter Vanderwall and his wife. I will let you two introduce yourselves, and then we'll give an overview of what we're going to cover today.
Okay, I'm Peter Vanderwall, and I wrote the book Mac's Big Wish, which was illustrated by Janice Lillian, and we're both from Salem.
Okay.
And I'm Dr. Kathleen Vanderwall. I'm a geologist by background. I'm retired from the Oregon Department of Education, and I support this guy in terms of technology, and because I think schools are the most important places in the world, I felt it was really important that we have lesson plans, so we have those, and we've been lucky enough to be nominated for the Patricia Gallagher Award, and that's how we got invited here to be with you important people.
All right. So just quickly, I'm going to pop over here. We were just talking about, it is National School Library Month. We just got our district library robot dog. Okay, so Braden Sibbett got to come over last week and help me co-teach classes to all 500 elementary students. He got to co-teach a lesson to his sister, fourth grader. How awesome is that? And we were just making the connection between the robot dog and this author's book. I used to be a medical service corps officer, and I worked at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, and the privilege, one of the biggest privileges I had there was coordinating the therapy dogs around the hospital to help the wounded soldiers heal. And when I first came to the district, I really wanted a district library therapy dog. And we have rules about animals in the district. So this robot dog was my next best way to bring a therapy dog to Sayusa School District. Okay, so I think can we start with the read aloud? Let's do the read aloud, and then we'll hop to questions and answers. So I'm gonna help you get the read aloud technology set up. And it's just a couple clicks of a button. I want to read pretty loud so it picks up on that.
So we have high school juniors and seniors here. This is a book for all ages, so don't fall asleep on me. It can be a bedtime story, but please stay awake.
Okay, so everyone just relax. We'll enjoy this beautiful read aloud, and then we'll get to our questions and answers. All right.
Oh, we have a fifth important student.
Okay, we're ready for you whenever you're ready for us.
Okay. So I'm going to be here this afternoon and tomorrow morning reading to classes at the elementary school. So like I said, we have high school juniors and seniors here, but Mac's Big Wish is a tale for all ages, so I hope you enjoy it, and this will give you some context when we talk about creative writing, and I'll be answering your questions then. So Mac's Big Wish, written by Peter Vanderwall, me, and illustrated by Janice Lillian. Mac, you sure are a cuddly puppy, said Mr. Puddleton as he put the little dog in the front window of Puddleton's Pet Rescue. Mac, cuddly puppy, screeched Roxy, the parrot. Mr. Puddleton stroked Mac's soft fur. You're so snuggly, someone will probably take you home today. Just then, with a squish, squash, squish, a man clomped into the shop. He took a quick look at Mac and squish, squash, squish, straight to Sandy, the yellow Labrador. Just the dog I've been looking for, he explained. You're going to be the best retriever ever. Mac watched Sandy scamper away. Outside the shop, everyone rushed about except for one small woman. Her face looked sad until she spotted Mac and stepped inside. What's your name, little puppy? Mac, cuddly puppy, Roxy squawked. I'm pleased to meet you, Mac. My name is Emma. Emma rubbed Mac's belly, fluffed his fur, and tickled his ears. Mac nuzzled Emma's hands, snuggled her cheek, and sniffed her hair. I wish I could take you home with me, Mac, said Emma. That evening, Mr. Puddleton turned off the lights and locked the door. He called out, "Good night, everybody." "Good night, everybody," Roxy mimicked. Mac curled up in his bed and gazed out into the night. The full moon looked alone on the dark sky. "Mac, cuddly, puppy," screeched Roxy at sunrise. "That's right, Roxy," Mr. Puddleton agreed. "I bet somebody takes Mac home today." Soon, with a click-clack, a woman walked into the shop. She click-clacked straight to Precious, the poodle. "Just the dog I've been looking for. You're going to win first prize at all the shows." Mac watched Precious prance away. That afternoon, Emma returned to the shop. "I thought somebody would have taken you home by now, Mac." She smiled as she stroked Mac's fluffy fur. "I wish I could take you home with me." Mac wished so too. Roxy woke Mac up the next morning with her screeching. "Mac, cuddly, puppy." "Surely someone will take you home today, Mac," Mr. Puddleton said. Moments later, a couple raced into the shop, their running shoes squeaking. They glanced at Mac and then jogged straight to Dash, the greyhound. "Just the dog we've been looking for," they cheered. "You're going to be the fastest dog at the park." Mac watched Dash dart away. Just then, Emma limped into the shop. She winced with each step, but her face softened with a smile and her eyes sparkled as she petted Mac. "I wish I could take you home with me." Mac wished she could too. One morning, Mr. Puddleton put a new puppy in Mac's spot and carried Mac back to a pen by the turtles. "Maybe this is your lucky spot, Mac." But Mac wondered if he would ever be just the right dog for anyone. He couldn't retrieve like Sandy, or prance like Precious, or run like Dash. He was just Mac. He didn't feel special at all. Mac sighed. At least Emma would visit and snuggle him. Mac waited all day, but Emma didn't come in. Days passed, and still no Emma. Days turned to weeks, and still no Emma. Then one morning, a woman padded into the shop. Her name tag read, "Virginia. I'm looking for a special dog, for a special job." "There are some nice puppies in the window," Mr. Puddleton offered. Virginia shook her head. "No." "Perhaps one of these?" Mr. Puddleton pointed to a pen of pugs. "No, they won't do either." Virginia frowned and padded toward the door. "I guess I'll try somewhere else." Suddenly, Roxy squawked, "Mac, cuddly, puppy." "Mac, cuddly, puppy?" Virginia laughed. "He's here in the back," said Mr. Puddleton, leading the way. When Mac saw Virginia, he wiggled all over and wagged his nubby tail. "Mac, you're just the dog I've been looking for." Virginia smiled wide. "You're going to be the best dog for a special job." Mr. Puddleton smiled and Roxy flapped her wings as they watched Mac ride away with Virginia. Mac followed Virginia into a big room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet a new friend," Virginia announced. "His name is..." Then a familiar voice cried out, "Mac!" "I'm so happy you're here," Emma beamed. "My wish came true." Mac wiggled in delight. His wish had come true too. It wasn't long before Mac made friends with everyone. He exercised with Ed and sang a song with Sally. He watched a Western with Wyatt and gardened with Grace. That evening, Mac settled into his new bed the end of the hallway. It was warm and cozy. He looked out the window at the night sky. The moon was only a sliver, but it didn't look lonely anymore. Thousands of stars twinkled around him. A familiar hand softly petted Mac's back. Emma was looking up at the night sky too. It's a big universe, Mac. You're a part of it. Her eyes twinkled like the stars. Good night, my friend. Mac closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. He wasn't a good retriever like Sandy, or a prize winner like Precious, or a fast runner like Dash. He was Mac. He had the best job of all. He was a good friend. How lucky can a dog get? The end.
Yay! That was so sweet.
So it was a bedtime story, but everybody's still awake.
Hey,
Great.
good. We love children's stories. In fact, our high school student, we do use the AR program across the district, even our high school students, and we love our high schoolers getting 0.5 worth points reading children's books. So, and we even do classroom reads and Pride, or we were doing that first semester, right? So hey, I have the camera now on you all. No stress. This is again just for Ms. Goodell and the classmates who aren't here. Would you mind hopping over on that side of the table just so you're in? And then, sorry to make you move. And then I will have to ask you all to speak pretty loudly during our conversation just so it picks up down on this end. But Ms. Goodell had students prepare lovely questions for you. Maybe before we start our questions and answers, can we go down and just do introductions? You may have did a little bit of that, but just say your name, your grade level, and whether you're in Ms. Goodell's class or not. So starting right here, nice and loud.
I'm Robert. I'm a junior, and I am in Ms. Goodell's class.
I'm Jamie. I am a senior, and I am in Ms. Goodell's class. I'm Talib. I'm a senior, and I am in Ms. Goodell's class.
Okay. Junior?
I'm Mercedes. I'm in Ms. Goodell's class, and I'm a junior.
Okay, thank you, students. And then I really want to know, I'm going to ask the first question. Have you all met a professional author before, or is this your first time meeting a professional author?
Once in a Zoom call last year.
Okay, so you've met an author over Zoom, but this might be your first live author visit.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Anybody else ever meet an author in person? Okay. It's really special to get to spend time with an author face to face. So I'm going to be quiet now and let students drive the conversation. Do we maybe want to start with Robert and you each take a turn and just go down the line and ask one question and then we'll go back through for another lap?
And I should just qualify this by, I have not made a living as an author and a writer. I'm also retired, like Kathleen, and my day job was in finance and accounting, but I did major in English in college, and this was quite a long time ago. I had difficulty getting a job with that major, so I went back to graduate school and got a graduate degree in accounting and finance, and that's what my career was in. But I did creative writing just to keep my sanity because you know,
It's a
I
passion.
enjoy finance and accounting, but it's a little on the boring side. So basically, the first day that I worked as an accountant was pretty much when I started getting serious about writing. And I started out writing short stories, which I did in creative writing class in college. And I continued writing short stories and had some published in like Willamette Week and some literary journals. And then I discovered I've always been a big movie lover, and so I taught myself how to write screenplays because that style seemed to lend itself more to how I thought and wrote, more of a visual sense. And so I spent most of my writing career writing screenplays, and I have had some movies produced.
Which ones?
One was called Hideaway with Josh Lucas and James Cromwell. It's a drama, and I think you can find it on Amazon. I wrote a Western called Shadowheart. I think that's also on Amazon. A thriller that played on Lifetime television called Reverse Angle. And then I worked as an assistant director on one of Angelina Jolie's first movies called Without Evidence, which filmed in Salem. It was a true crime drama. So even now, this is my first published book. And when I was raising my sons in the, again, many years ago, I wrote bedtime stories for them. And this was originally a story about a black lab named Hank, but I'll get to the evolution of the story. But it won an award with Willamette Writers, and the Salem Library chose it as a story hour selection, which the librarian acted out the parts. It wasn't published, and there were no props or anything like that. She presented it to story hour. So that gave me encouragement to pursue publishing this, which happened a number of years later. So that's a little background
as
on
an
me.
independent.
As an independent.
Okay, well, it sounds like you've had a rich and colorful career in creativity, and this is where you're at right now on your creative journey, and we're excited to see where you go.
Me too.
Right? Okay, well, let's start with Robert and go ahead and ask one of your questions that seem appropriate at the time, and then we'll
All right.
roll down.
So I
the
guess I'll
line.
start with my first one. Is what made you really decide to write children's book instead of a novel?
You know, I have never even tried to tackle a novel. I don't know, the whole concept seems daunting to me in terms of getting into a character's head and talking about how they think and so on. Writing children's picture storybooks as well as screenplays, you're basically showing what the audience is going to see and hear. And I'm not trying, you're trying to reveal what they're thinking by what they're saying and doing. And I think that children's picture storybooks is kind of a nice step from screenplays because I'm relying on pictures or images to further the story. Because the story, I mean, without the artwork, there'd be nothing to look at. It might be a little boring.
Thank you for that question, Robert. That was great.
All right. So this is one of mine. It's if you could read and write one genre for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Probably thrillers. I like to put together puzzles to give the audience a chance to piece it together and figure it out as they're watching it or reading it. So thrillers first, dramas second, comedies are a distant third. So,
That was a great question.
I try to be funny, but it doesn't always come off, so I'll leave that to the professionals.
What is the best time of day for you to write?
You know, when I was working, it was evenings and weekends. But it is easier. I'm more fresh in the morning, so I try to do most of my challenging stuff in the morning.
Yep.
After a couple cups of coffee. How do I? Some of it's based on real life. I will just catch a glimpse of somebody doing something or saying something, and I'll just kind of file it away, and I'll just let my imagination run with it. For instance, in Mac's Big Wish, Mac is of course the main character, and when my mom was in an assisted living center many years ago, therapy dogs were just starting to come into existence. And when I was visiting my mom, I saw a little dog named Trooper walking down the hallway, going into each room and cheering up each patient. And I thought, wow, that's really wonderful that a dog can raise people's spirits like that. And so I only saw him for 5 or 10 seconds, but I built on that and just thought about it, dream stuff up about it. Where did he come from? What's he doing now? So usually real life, and then I let my imagination run wild.
I want to talk about Virginia a little bit and Ed, exercising with Ed.
Oh, well,
'Cause those are characters.
those are characters, and Virginia is my mom's name, and I try to honor people I know by giving them their names to my characters. My sister's names have been in a few screenplays. Kathleen's been named in a screenplay. But yeah, Virginia's my mom's
I think you
name.
named me something else. You
No.
named me Beryl.
But
Did wrong.
Ed is Kathleen's dad's name, and that's basically his picture with the handlebar mustache. Sally is my sister, and she plays piano. And I don't know Wyatt or Grace, but so real people.
I think it's really cool you use people you know as inspiration for your things. My question is what steps did you take to find an editor?
Well, I'll start out with screenplays because I've done a lot more of that, and the movies I got produced were mainly through, I sold them through either a manager or an agent. And kind of the steps I went through to get somebody to champion my work, which an editor does also, is one, you have to have a certain amount of dedication to write and finish a project, which in the creative writing class you probably have a nice sense of accomplishment when you finish, whether it's a short story or a poem or a play or whatever. And then you share it with other people. And you can kind of gauge, is this really good? And that doesn't mean showing it to your mom and her saying, I love it, because that's a mom's job. You share it with other people, and most people try to be nice, but hopefully they're constructive as well, and sometimes you can sift out the constructive criticism from the compliments, and how can I make this story or screenplay better? So you just keep reworking your work. And in my case, there were writing competitions, like the Willamette Writers has a annual competition, and you start entering your pieces there, and if they start winning or getting attention, honorable mentions or so on, you say, well, I should keep at this. I'm getting some good feedback. I think I'm getting pretty good at this. And at the same time, you can start sending your work out to be published. Either, if you've written a novel, you look for an editor, or for short stories, you go to magazines or literary journals, and a lot of these, of course, are online now. But you submit your work, and sometimes they'll say, we really like this, but it's not quite good enough to publish. Or if you make these changes, we'd like to publish this. So you're getting feedback all along the way. It's a long process, but it's basically, there's a lot of filters that the world has set up for writers, just like any other occupation, that you have to pass in order to get to the next level, to get published. And so for finding an editor, we used an editor that specialized in children's picture storybooks. And we basically worked with her, and she made a lot of suggestions. And this was before we had an illustrator, but we hadn't started working with her yet. And so the editor basically, in my case, she said that the story is way too long. A children's picture storybook should be a certain number of words, and mine was like twice that length. So she said, I would cut this, and this, so I did, and then she said, well, where else do you think you can cut? And so I just had to look for ways to say something in fewer words, and also to let the pictures tell a lot of the story. I don't have to say everything. I can let the audience, the readers and the listeners take from the pictures what's going on in the story.
Do you think that helps you with your screenwriting too?
Yeah. Like, for instance, when we have these series of characters that are coming in and they're looking for a certain kind of dog, and they see Mac, but then they go to another dog, and then we jump to Mac watched Sandy scamper away or Precious prance away. I make the jump entirely so that we don't witness. I'd like to get this dog, and so we don't. The audience just knows, okay, Mac wasn't picked. He's watching the dog leave, and I'm still here. So there's a lot of, I guess they used to call it shoe leather, where you're just kind of cutting out unnecessary business to condense it and make the story flow better.
All right. Oh, did you have another question? Did you want?
Are you happy with all the cuts you made? Do you think the story is?
Yeah. I am. It flows, especially when I'm reading it aloud.
Awesome.
But
All
yeah,
right.
I'm happy. And I'm very pleased with the illustrators.
Okay, we'll come back down at this end of the table. I think we have time for another run of questions. We do
Okay.
have about 10 to 12 minutes or so before you have to pop down to the elementary school. Oh gosh, I had a question and I just lost it. Oh, I was actually going to ask the class just for Peter. You're a creative writing class. What types of pieces of writing have you worked on with Ms. Goodell so far?
Poetry, short stories for the majority of it.
Okay,
We haven't done a lot of other stuff.
okay.
And maybe when you go through your questions, you can tell me which form you're leaning towards, just in the class, which one you like
Yeah.
best.
Yeah. I hope to write a children's book one day as well. It's on my bucket list. Okay, well.
There are some sequels in the works. So.
Good. Robert, do you want to go ahead with another one of your questions and we'll just go down the line? And again, try to talk a little loud just so we can hear on the phone, the recording. Thank you.
Okay, so I asked one of Sam's questions. It was, how do you strengthen dialogue? I think that is more for the screenplays.
Read it aloud to yourself, and if it sounds clunky, it probably is, or have other people, friends, read the dialogue. And I was never big on that. I just didn't want to share my work with people, so I did a lot of reading aloud to myself, and I don't know if dialogue always is actually realistic the way people, because people, dialogue when you're writing in a screenplay, there's not a lot of wells, uhs, or whatever, I don't knows, or kind of, but that's how people really talk, and it's to get information across. So you try to be as concise as possible in writing the dialogue, but you also read it aloud to make it sound like, yeah, that's how people talk. That sounds realistic.
All right, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pass to him, and I only had that one question.
Monica, that couldn't make it. One of her questions was favorite memory.
That's a good one. One of my favorite memories is I grew up in upstate New York, and my grandfather, my dad's dad, had a farm that he grew hay on, and it was kind of a small operation. And he would have a neighbor come bale his hay. He didn't have the equipment himself, but neighbor would come bale the hay, and then we would go. My dad worked at a regular job during the day. He did not work on the farm, so we would go over in the evening. My dad, me, his brother, my uncle Earl, and his two sons, my cousins, Ricky and Terry, and we would bring in the hay, and it was this truck. So when I was littler, we would just roll the bales down so they were kind of in a single line, and then my dad and my uncle would throw the hay up on the truck and stack it, take it to the take it to the barn and stack it in the barn. And you know, these were nights in July and August. It was warm, but it just, now it seems like an idyllic memory. We were inexpensive labor, and it turns out I got hay fever, so when I got older, I couldn't do it because I would get up in the barn and all the seeds were flying around, and I just would sneeze like crazy. But that's one of my favorite memories.
Yeah.
David asks, what made you want to write children's books and screenplays?
Well, for children's books, it came out of reading a lot of kids' books to my sons when they were growing up, bedtime stories. And of course, you know, as I was reading them, I thought, this doesn't too hard. But it was hard. And I was writing screenplays before that, before they were born, actually. And I liked writing screenplays because I liked movies, and I liked, it just lent itself to the way I wrote in terms of showing what people are saying and doing, and then let the audience extrapolate from that what they're thinking, or what their motives are, whether it's a mystery, or a thriller, or a drama.
Most of my questions were answered. I don't really have anything else to ask.
I have one from earlier. You said you grew up in upstate New York. How was that move from there to
Salem.
over here? Yeah.
You know, I moved to Salem in 1986, and I was in my early 30s. I had been out to Salem a few times for work, and so I took a job with the company that I was working for. It was like a job transfer, but I loved the area, and I knew that in the job I had that I would move someplace else from upstate New York. And I don't think there was really too much culture shock. We got a lot of snow there. Here in the Willamette Valley, not so much. But I could always drive up to the mountains and get snow, or drive out to the coast. So I really liked it because in upstate New York, it was a lot of the same thing. Whereas here, drive an hour to the coast, drive an hour to the mountains, Eugene, Salem, Portland. I've never regretted moving out here. So I didn't hear what your favorite forms of writing.
Ooh. So, I like poetry more, but I always like to write them into a story-esque instead of like I'd say traditional poetry.
Mm-hmm.
So I make them a bit longer, so they end up being more like short stories with the structure of a poem.
Okay. And you're also working on a song.
Right now, yes.
And how is that compared to a poem?
Well, it's odd. Like I have to make sure that actually sounds okay when it comes out. It's not like, because like poetry, I can read it, and as long as it has a flow as I'm reading it, it's fine. But if it doesn't have a flow as it's being told or spoken or sung, like for poetry, you don't have to worry about that as much.
Yeah. Do you already have the melody in mind?
Not necessarily, no. I haven't been thinking too much about that yet. It's still trying to focus on what the song's about and what the lyrics would be.
Just sharing
Jamie,
Peter's
what's your what?
Mine.
Kind of
So
writing.
yeah, based on what he said, we've been doing short stories and poems. And probably my favorite this year that we've done was our poems. And I like limerick poems.
Okay. There once was a man.
Yeah,
We learned that one as a class.
yeah, I like limerick poems a lot, but
They are funny. And clever.
because I can put them together better and faster, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, but I do love writing short stories because I can just let my imagination just go and just keep flowing
Sure.
out with that.
Sure.
But I like both of them, really.
Can you give us a limerick?
Off the top of my head, ooh, no. But I can.
You can do.
I'll
There
pull
once
some-
was a man
I'll-
from Nantucket who kept all his money in a bucket.
That
But his
version.
daughter named Nan ran away with the man, and as for the bucket, Nantucket.
If we have time, I'll pull mine.
I've had that song in my or limerick in my head for years.
If you want to read it, you can read it too.
My favorite is poetry. I'm not very good at rhyming, so like Robert, I kind of make them into short stories.
Sure.
They kind of have poetry structure,
Mm-hmm.
so they're not as long like a short story. They're not short.
Right.
I like short stories.
Mm-hmm.
They're fun to read. So, like the videos.
Are they like mysteries or dramas?
Some are mysteries, some are murder mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
I love mysteries and thrillers. I love murder mysteries.
And you don't have to rhyme.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. Does poetry is it supposed to rhyme these days or?
It doesn't have to. There's a lot of different ways you could do it.
Yeah.
So I've tried writing a sestina. Those ones are fun but kind of weird.
Okay.
It's a structure.
Sestina?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like a French structure of a poem. I can't necessarily describe how it is, but it's like you choose 6 words for 6 lines, and those last words have to be like the very last words of each line in a certain order. Like,
So you've got a structure to work with.
yeah,
Huh.
it's
Do you have to write it in French?
no.
That'd be out of luck.
I'll just be naming pastries.
I write poetry. If you want, I have some if you like to read them.
Sure.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go to top art. But
Okay.
I have others. It's just mostly like written in that was kind of weird.
This is such a lovely conversation between you all, and you're sharing your writing back and forth. That's super beautiful. Hey students, I will say that it is 12:48, so we do probably want to get boogieing in a couple of minutes. I want you to finish, reading that page there. Do we have any? We might have time for like one final question. Does anyone have like a burning question you want to ask before we head on down to the elementary school?
And my email is on there. You're welcome to send me an email if you think of a question later. I'm happy to answer a question. about
So-
it.
Burning question?
Sam also wrote down what should be included in the screenplay. Maybe like base elements.
Character, dialogue, action, narrative.
The stuff in parentheses, right? The stage directions or whatever.
Yeah, and you don't really do too much of that.
Okay.
If you do, the actors don't like that because they like to interpret from the narrative, the setting, location is another element, how they can interpret the line. So
Okay.
if you put angrily in parentheses, they're going to be offended.
They'll be angry about
Yeah,
that
so-
angrily. Okay. All right, well, for the sake of the recording, I'm going to stop